every business is different, reporting needs, consolidation needs. There's a lot of data and manual work that goes into it. What do you think are the most important things that finance teams need to know when it comes to closing the books in the best way?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I'm going to give a bit of a story. This is somewhat surreal and ironic that I'm giving a webinar on your end. So a bit of background about myself. CPA, been in finance for a bit. The reason I actually left classical finance into the fintech space because I absolutely despised year end. Yep, it was just brutal, and it
I'm
actually
sure
got
many
me.
people here can relate to that sentiment.
No,
Right,
it
if you love the year-end close process.
it honestly is one of the most cumbersome things in FP&A accounting, I think. Yeah, so there are many different issues, I'd say, right? When it comes to year end. And don't take my word for it, because like taking a more surveyed experience here, an approach here, FICFO did an survey recently, and the most common pain points pertaining to year-end close, right, were system limitations, which is 50%, intercompany issues were 41%, non-standard procedures were 30%, number of spreadsheets without versioning and audit control were 30% as well, limited number of FTEs, allocations, once again, number of systems being used. So we see a bit of a theme here, and that's mostly too many cooks, right? And the cooks could be spreadsheets, could be systems, could be disparate siloed data sources. That's like the biggest challenge if you want to put an umbrella over all the challenges I'd see within a fiscal closing. But yeah, how actually we should take some time here as well for the team here. Please feel free to jump in, add into the Q&A what you all think are your biggest challenges, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, go on, Roxy. I totally jumped, cut you off there.
We got a request to raise your voice. I hear you
Oh,
just fine.
apologies.
That's all right.
No worries.
Agreed. Yeah, we'll do a live Q&A after tackling a bit of the conversation in the demo. So everyone, please think of specific questions that you want to ask that we can discuss related to the year-end closing process. So as you mentioned, number of data systems involved in a company, this is something that can really slow down people's processes. What is the biggest problem there? Is it like pulling in the data, keeping that data organized?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Also, is my voice a bit better right now?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, so it's like the disparate sources. So in most cases, one classic example is headcount reconciliation at the year end. I don't think in the history of time there's ever been an instance where your HR system reconciled with the GL system, right? There's always a delay. So when you do the close end, you might need to do some true ups, right? Or some reconciliations of sorts. So when you do the reconciliations in the traditional sense, you'd have to download sheets, an Excel sheet from one end, keep it open on one side, download the transactional or the subledger information onto the other side, do manual reconciliations. Some systems might be able to do it on the system itself, but because the source data is in two different sources or three different sources, it eventually ends up all coming into Excel and eventually becomes a lookup or a sum if or a sum product of some kind. And that leads to further problems like identifying which version of the lookup is the actual correct version. If you made any manual adjustments on top of the lookup variances, which adjustments are correct, right? Were they approved? Were they not approved? So it just opens up this whole can of worms that leads into just A loss of hair, like mine. But yes. I swear, I believe
And
I started balding because of year end. So
wow.
that
Well, Datarails can help with that.
is true.
But in addition, I mean, that just sounds like a terrible loss of time. It's the end of the year.
Mhm.
Headcount is like a very time specific piece of data. It really needs to be done right. That's a lot of money going in and out of the business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
No, very good point. Like even like that's a really good point because SG&A and headcount is one of the biggest drivers in any expense, especially these days with like the economy in somewhat of a tumultuous situation, if I was to put it that way.
mhm,
But and like further to that as well, especially with companies that are a wee bit larger and that might have like FX, right? So cumulative translation adjustments that might only happen at the consolidated level need to be looked into. Then yeah, so then also could be billing, right? So nowadays, actually, systems have evolved to a point that it's not only sundry items that are being put through credit cards, more like big payments, such as like purchases of items that might be exceeding 100K thresholds or other large material thresholds also need to be reconciled, right? Uh, so, for example, in that use case, say you have like a bill payment system, right? And your GL system has a different item in that. One, the allocation from the bill payment to your specific GLs could be wrong. So that could essentially throw off some reports onto certain markets, right? Certain departments. So yeah, it just opens up a whole can of worms. But yeah.
yeah, and I suppose that depending on the size of the business, a lot of these things might be handled very manually in Excel. As the business grows, they might
Mhm.
adopt some sort of, payroll or CRM tool to help manage the counting and the calculations. But even then, it's not a full solution, right? That data still has to be consolidated and reported externally.
Yep. No,
Mhm.
very good point as well, Roxy, because one thing, especially when I talk to my clients, regardless of the size of the company or the tools they have, the most common theme I see is they always come back to Excel because like everyone knows Excel, right?
Yeah.
Everyone hates Excel, right? But it's like the most
Love-hate
flexible,
relationship.
right? It is. It is the most commonly known love-hate relationship in finance after your end, I suppose. But yeah, so everyone ends up coming into it. And then once you do, you run into all the issues that come with Excel, like the lack of databasing, the lack of versioning, the lack of trackability, audit history, and especially during audit season, uh, when you have to go back and search all these files and explain where these variances are. Also, say if you are a larger company that's merging with something else, a smaller company that's been acquired by like a venture capitalist firm or like something else, you need to have all that backed up data to answer certain pending questions, right? So yeah, with Excel, that's never fun.
Right.
Uh,
It's really not built for finance teams, even though it
mhm.
is still, the most essential tool.
It is, and like another, like a recently a potential customer told me Excel is basically a digitized ledger and nothing more, nothing less. And finance hasn't evolved in terms of what you could do with a digitized ledger as opposed to uh, just a paper ledger, right? Yeah, sure, you have a record of it, but you still run into which record's correct and which record's not correct, the same issues. But yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. No, that's I think that's a great um point to segue us also into showing perhaps some
yeah.
people came here to see, what Datarails looks like, how it supercharges Excel sheets. So do you want to pop it open and
Yeah, most definitely.
awesome.
Let me share my screen. And team, once again, as you would have already noticed, my demos aren't very professional. They're very conversational. So we got David, Anuk, and Roxanne on deck here today. So please feel free to ask as many questions as possible. We have a
Yeah.
Q&A session at the end, especially with David. Ask all the questions you can because I asked all my questions from him as well. He's a systems guru. But yeah, please, team, feel free.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I failed to mention it myself, but a member of our team is monitoring the Q&A too. So whether you have questions specifically for Nirv or just general and in about Datarails, feel free to throw them in and we'll tackle everything that we can. All right. We want to include you all in this discussion we're having about the year-end close.
Lovely. Perfect. Can everyone see my screen?
Not
Roxy,
yet.
not yet. Give me 1 second. Oh, probably because I've not shared it yet. Let me click the big green button. There we go. One of those days. Perfect. Can everyone see it now?
It's coming up.
Lovely.
Beautiful.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Roxy.
Yeah.
All right, Tips. So going back to my initial spiel about like the issues of year-end and the most common pain points, right? So if you summarize year-end or any reconciliation, be it month-end, you have the records, right? Then you have to consolidate the records. So the records could be transactional, sub-ledger, your previous forecast, budgets, all those different things. Number 2 is to consolidate them, right? So you're able to basically take all the information from different sources and do reconciliations with ease. Post-consolidation, the third step is reporting, right? So it's usually known as record to reporting, R2R. The way we like to look at it is the same, but we kind of give it a wee bit of a different name. So we call it source, structure, and output. So what is Datarails? Quickly segue from my spiel there. Datarails is a system, an FP&A planning tool. And I know Roxy's going to hate me saying this. We market ourselves an FP&A planning tool, but it's honestly way more than that. It's a data planning tool, right? They're very unique in that sense compared to the other FP&A tools out there. We not dimensionalize and set into a certain structure. We actually adjust to whatever your process of planning, whatever your financial or data planning methodology is. Very flexible in that sense. So one common use case there is rather than just having a couple of predefined dimensions, we can have any field that you report on to be able to report on. Lovely. So that's Datarails. And the other key unique thing about Datarails is we work with Excel. So you take all the good things about Excel and forget all the bad things about Excel, and you get Datarails. It's Datarails, it's Excel on steroids, basically. So you essentially are able to use your existing financial models. We can also build new ones for you, but on top of that, we overlay a backend for you. So a very robust audit backend. We also have a very robust dashboard backend as well, and a calc engine. I don't want to get too much into the technicalities, but we can definitely dive deeper into that in the Q&A. How do we control the data flow? What comes through? What do we do with the data? And how do we report that data? I feel it's captured really well in this very succinct workflow over here. So obviously, as the name suggests, workflows is how we control the process flow, right? So in this case, it's a monthly reporting process flow. This could be an yearly reporting process flow. It could be a year-end close process flow, completely up to you. The key factors here is in step number 1, this is a source data. Steps 2 and 3 is structuring that source data. And step number 4 is the output of that structured source data, right? Okay, so if you look at step number 1, you can see there's a whole slew of files here, a bunch of Excel files, a bunch of NetSuite connections and SAP connections. What are these? So these are basically connections into your systems. Datarails is data agnostic. So we can connect to your finance systems. We can connect to your CRMs, HRS systems, even built-in custom systems as well. The most common way we connect to systems is through an API, QBO, QuickBooks, NetSuite, all these different things. We have over 100 odd APIs, which we can connect to the systems with. Alternatively, we can connect to systems through a sync server where we connect to your database directly, FTP server, or the traditional Excel drag and drop as well. So technically, there's no limitation on if we can connect to or not connect to your system. 99% of the time, it's a yes, unless it's like built in the 50s with like some coding language no one knows of. But yes, so
It's true. We can connect to just about anything, Datarails, yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So, and essentially, what's also nice just is the cadence of the data pulling this in, right? So you can set the actuals to come in monthly, daily, weekly, hourly, completely up to you. We can also database your Excels, like so your previous forecast, your working files, your budgets you might want to bring into a system and have it normalized. We can do that as well. What's unique is you don't need to adjust your Excel files to fit a certain structure. We have a mapping tool that we can map your existing Excel file and push all that data into our system. Lovely. So why am I going on about all this pushing of data into a system, right? I think that tackles the primary or the most commonly complained about issue pertaining to year-end, disparate data sources, right? And having them in one place and being able to pull them when you need to. So especially with year-end, it's not just about reconciliations. There's always analysis going on, right? Hour over hour, just to understand what's happening. I know I used to work for an oil and gas company, and we had to reconcile billing data through these 4 different systems. So in hindsight, the process, if it was structured properly, should have taken no more than 1 hour, but it took 3 days just to reconcile that, because no fault of anyone's, but like it was disparate systems that didn't talk to each other and different people were working in different places. Yeah, so then what we do is after we bring that source data into one database, so all this would lie within our cloud database, which is an Azure encrypted database, and we can definitely get into those details later if we need to. What we do is we can add further structure to that. Steps number 2, what could this structure be? So the most common thing we see is essentially alternate chart of accounts, alternate groupings. What are they like? I'm going to show you this. I'm going to pull this into my correct screen. Perfect. Roxy, are we able to see the Excel file? Or is it still?
Not yet, Nirv. It's still on the web app.
Okay, no worries. Let me reshare again.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. What about now?
Yeah. Yep.
Love
now
it.
we see it.
Perfect. All right. So this file here, team, is basically this, right? It's just essentially this file over here. What we do is if we open this one up, you can see it's a whole slew of random data lines. What is this? Columns A to H is the segments your data would be in your source system, right? So it could be your GL. It doesn't have to be like this many segments. For example, if you have 0, right, the GL system, there's only 2 tracking categories. So it'll be 2 fields over here. QBO has a number of classes. NetSuite has a number of classes too. Completely depends on how you've sliced and diced the data in your source system. What we have here is essentially a giant lookup. So one of the key things about Datarails, it's customer centric. So we don't rely on a power user or like a managed services backing or need you to be a programmer of any kind. Essentially, if you know lookups and pivot tables, you can use Datarails. So that's what's happening here. What we've done is essentially created a grouping in column J based on some criteria from columns A to H. And what's nice is these groupings could be any logic you can think of Excel. So for example, say you want to create a cost center, and let's say any GL starting with a 4, right? And a business unit MDS has to go to cost center called Roxy. What you can do is essentially create this header over here, right? And add that logic if starts with 4 and is in BU MDS has to go to Roxy, right? And it's a lookup if statement. You have nested if statements, wildcard driven if statements, any kind of Excel logic to create groupings, it can be done here. What we do on our side is when you create this grouping, right? Any data coming from the source system at those defined levels get attached to that grouping. And what that allows you to do is create reports, dashboards, drill functionalities, all those different things in that grouping as well. Another use case we see is if you have multiple reporting requirements. So say multiple legal entities that might have local reporting requirements, and you might have a consolidated reporting requirement. You could have a different number of reporting groups. So here it could be P&L, this could be US P&L, CA P&L. And once you use our report builder, you just need to drag that member in there. And I'll show you that as well. So yeah. Oh, also my favorite use case is time series. So because we're not dimensionalized and we don't fit you into a certain structure, we can have multiple time series. So say you do a cohort analysis and you want to have like 2 time axes. One is your calendar year and the other would be like your invoice segmenting week or something along those lines. What you can do is essentially have a time lookup as well. So you can say, hey, this is my invoice date. That should be my week 1. And my week 1 should be mapped to my month 1, which should be Jan, and so on and so forth. That way you can report on daily, monthly, weekly, a combination of all of those as well. Completely up to you. Makes sense, everyone?
Yeah, I think like what Datarails really adds to your Excel here is just immense flexibility and the ability to see and create reports at a much more granular level while it's still connected to the other use cases that you need, right? It's shooting in to your consolidated sources for your reports. It's there for your budget. It's there for your dashboards. Everything is right there, and you're not bogged down with extra time in terms of like trying to reorganize it.
Money, Roxy. Yeah.
Thanks. and before you leave Excel, because you mentioned the report builder, I don't know what you had in mind next, but while we're here in Excel, everyone can see that we're in like real Excel. This is not limited in any way. You have absolute full functionality of Microsoft Excel, just as you use it today. But we have the Datarails add-in, which we're calling Datarails Flex. It's the Excel add-in for FP&A. So maybe you want to switch over to that. If it's your first time seeing Datarails, this is our Excel add-in. So Datarails as a system lives in 2 places. We have the web version that Nirv showed before, and we have all of these features here right built into Excel as well. So I just wanted to give that visual to people.
Nope, that's really good. Actually, I was gonna pivot there. Thanks, Roxy. Yeah, to Roxy's point, team, this is the Datarails add-in, and this is what you control the data flow from the cloud database where your data is stored into your Excel front end, right? So there's a whole slew of functionalities over here, which we can get into in a wee bit. But the last thing I also want to illustrate, jumping on Roxy's point, is the data consolidation factor here with this add-in and all the data structure. It's very simple to drag in and report as you need to. Lovely. I think we've spent enough time on this lookup, right? So once again, just to reiterate, you don't need to do sum ifs, sum products, VLOOKUPs, Excel lookups each time. You need to do some reconciliations. Once you set that logic up once, we tag the data at that level. It could be the most detailed level, and you can pull that data or those tags as you need to. Perfect. So going back into my workflow here. Same kind of logic for FX as well, right? I'm not going to get into that because I'm going to go into another spiel because I love the FX side of things here, but we can get into details if you need to one-on-one later. But yeah, same logic there. It's all basically a lookup logic. And what's nice with FX as well, because we use Datarails as the front end, Excel as the front end, you could have an ODBC connection to fx.com or any live updating FX sites too. So you can have like transactional level FX if you need to. Most common use case, we see one rate for FX, for monthly, one rate for the balance sheet, right? A P&L balance sheet. So completely up to you all, how you all want to handle that. There's no limitation. Lovely. Also, the other thing I want to show you is when there's new data in your source system, right? We essentially tell you, hey, there's a new data item. You have not mapped it. So you have the ability to go in there and map it. You can either do it on this web portal, or if it's like a whole slew of items like this, you can export to Excel, do a mass mapping, and upload back by a simple drag and drop into the system. Perfect. Roxy, how are we looking on time?
Doing great, doing great.
Perfect. Lovely.
Yeah, if there's more you want to show us, like take about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll leave the last 7 minutes for questions.
Perfect. Lovely. That sounds great. Yeah. I shall hurry along, team, because I tend to go on random tangents like I did earlier. Apologies. So yeah, same logic with the eliminations and the allocations as well. You can keep your allocations as succinct as this over here. 1 second. There we go. Zoom does not like me today. There we go. Oh, perfect. You can keep it as succinct as this if you need to. You can get extremely detailed with the allocations. The key component for Datarails is where it's been allocated to and what the percentage is. And as you can see from a structural standpoint, to Roxy's point, you can use all the functionality of Excel, macros, all those different things as you need to. And honestly, if you have Datarails, you don't need to use macros. But you can if you need to, right? And in terms of structuring the template, there is no limitation. Same thing with eliminations. You can do a whole slew of things with the eliminations. You can keep it at a elimination account level. You can also have a combination of account and entity. We can adjust to your business process, right? So you can see the eliminations over here. What's also nice is Datarails has a open API, right? So say you want to do because all your data is consolidated in our source system, right? And you want to do eliminations. Say some of the eliminations are a bit more standard, right? And we can almost like a transactional month-to-month kind of situation, we can automate that. If it's more like ad hoc like this, you can essentially get to the sub-ledger level and do those entries, right? And because it's bi-directional, some systems actually take journal entry uploads, some things like NetSuite or QBO, we can actually push it back into the source system if you need to. Or we can all assign that to an elimination account and keep it within Datarails. But yeah, these are like different nuances of how we can handle a situation. And eventually tying it all together are the outputs. So one more thing, team, the manipulations don't have to just reside into these 3 steps. It could be a whole slew of different manipulations, completely up to y'all, how you all want to handle your specific business process, right? And eventually reporting on that data that we played around with. What's nice is we can actually bring that into Excel. We can also bring that into PowerPoint, right? We can also do that in our dashboards. So I'm going to quickly show you what an Excel output would look like. I'm going to drag this in here. There we go. Zoom actually despises me today. I don't know what's going on. Perfect. Can you see my screen now?
Oh, yeah, it's coming in. Wait, I still see the workflow.
There you go. This is slow, laggy drag. It's hilarious. Okay. Perfect. There we go. So as you can see here, team, the key component to understanding Datarails, right, is 1 second. Let me just delete that. Yeah, the key component to understanding Datarails is this formula. Looks complex. Honestly, all it is this is saying look up the data, right? And from my scenario column, where I structured that data from the source system, pull in actuals. From my period column in my database, pull in for this month. Essentially, I'm defining what this intersection of data should be, and it's literally a lookup. But instead of looking up into a different workbook or a different data sheet, you're looking up into a structured database on the backend. What that allows you to do is, because that data is very structured, another way to kind of look at that is I can bring you to a formula builder where you can build reports, formulas, and all these different things quite easily. So if you want to visualize this in a different manner, right? You don't have to build all the formulas from scratch each time. You can just do a drag and drop pivot table view. And these are all your fields in your source system, right? And then essentially we have let's drag this to the side. Perfect. Here's your pivot table data, and this is all the intersection. If you want to see how one of those formulas work, you can see shows the formula, and you can see what that formula is, right? Very straightforward there. In terms of what we do with the data, we add a whole slew of structures to it as well, time frames, all these different aggregations. We can do custom aggregations such as like period to date, lifetime dates, and all those different things. So essentially Excel on steroids. So yeah, taking that out there, going back into this, the other really nice thing is because we have that data from your source systems at the most detailed level, and you want to reconcile it, see what makes up this number. We have a drill down functionality. We can go to drill down by field. And this shows you all the different fields in your source system, right? Say if you want to do, I'm going to drill down by my GL account, right? I can go into this, click OK. And this will take you to transactional level detail. So normally it's a lot faster. Not sure what's going on right now, but we can definitely dive into a demo later to see the full detail here. But yeah, so you can see all the transactional level detail. You can also we create a pivot table for you with those fields, so you can play around with them as you need to. System month, different divisions if you want to bring that in, right? And the underlying transactional information. We also can do hyperlinks into your source system for invoices, PDFs, also a subledger information if you need to bring that in as well. And what's nice about Datarails is you can report on any of these fields because it's just a field and we're not limited to dimensions, right? Back to my other spiel about reconciling HR, right? Because all this data from disparate sources are structured into one database. Right now, if you want to see what this value makes up, it's very simple. Go to drill down. Earlier, we drilled down into our finance GL data. Now we want to drill down into our HR data. All we need to do is switch the table name to finance. So off the bat, team, y'all would never have this many tables. It's our demo environment. It is absolutely atrocious. We're working on cleaning this up. Normally, it'll be like 1 or 2 tables for you, right? So I'm going to do a head count here. I want to see this by position. I can go to click on position. And essentially, I have the full HR detail coming from a HRS system. So I want to see what values they are. I can just click on value, and I have all this information. I want to drill down into this, right? Obviously, all this is data permissionable. So this same report could go to 50 different people, right? And you can set data permissions, so they will see 50 different views of it. Lovely. And a whole bunch of other functionality here as well. So when we do forecasting and budgeting, we want to submit the data back into the system. When we want to pull in actuals, we just refresh to pull in actuals. You can get into the details as we need to. Filtering, all these different things are completely built into this as well. So it's a full-blown solution. These are all very nice, right? But sometimes people like the more visual side of things. Going back to my spiel about us having a completely robust dashboarding solution as well, right? If I want to come into this one, go to my dashboards, same underlying data, right? Instead of you pulling it into reports and to the front end, what you can do is come into this, and here you have your dashboards. 1 second, lovely. Can you guys see my dashboards?
Yeah, dashboard looking good. It's still loading up.
Oh,
here we go.
There we go. Lovely. Sorry. Perfect. Yeah. What's nice is you have the underlying data as you need to. We can also publish your P&Ls into dashboard as well. So any P&L you create with the same drill down capabilities can be published into your dashboards. Drilling down into this is very simple. You just click on this, right? Creating this is very simple as well. It's literally a big pivot table. If you know pivot dashboards, that's basically it, right? What's also nice, you have the same underlying data, and you have the ability to play around with them as we need to, so on and so forth. And this is your table. So right now we have the structures you want to drill down into. move them around if you need to. So now this is a drill down pathway. Types of graphs, we have a whole slew of graphs as well, right? That's all that I know. Everything's customizable too. And the last thing I want to show you guys is, I'm sorry, Oxy, we're coming up on time, but I think this is
You're doing
critical.
great. You're doing great.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Versioning and audit history. Datarails started as a versioning tool. So essentially, a version of this file is maintained each time you click submit, and you can essentially recover that version, go back, see what the previous version were, do comparisons on it. And also, we have the wireframe of this, right? So you can essentially go into the previous version, right? And see what the formula changes were. So over here, you can see if it's an FX over here, that tells you it's a formula change. If it's a plus, a column's added, numbers going up, and obviously you can also see the audit history. Datarails is the only tool that can do this level of cell audit because there's a patented technology from our founder that when they started this as an audit tool, they patented that. So yeah, that's a quick summary. What's nice about this tool team is this is a very succinct view of it. You can get extremely robust and complex with it, or you can keep it extremely simple and easy to use. It's a very flexible and robust system. And the other key component is we don't fit you into a certain structure. We work with what your structure is and build from that. And Nirv's rant is done.
Thank you so much, Nirv.
No worries, my pleasure.
That was really excellent. I think you did a really nice job showing us how, Datarails is really like a very flexible and playful tool. Like in Excel, you can really view all your data however you want. It's kind of a dream, right? For people who have been copy and pasting and struggling and waiting for spreadsheets to load just to get a certain view. When it's connected to Datarails, it's really just a couple clicks and you can see whatever you want. And then seeing everything so colorful in the dashboard too is really, really nice. So
now, on the money, Roxy, and also with the dashboard, sorry, just to digress there a wee bit, with the dashboards, like I only showed you the bare minimum. What you could do is you could also just have drill down functionalities. You can also have bursting up dashboards as well, where you can send it to 50 different people with 50 different views. So from an admin standpoint, you only have to worry about just creating one structure, right?
yeah.
So yeah, to your point, extremely flexible.
Yeah, that's really true. I love the permission settings and filters. So when it's the end of the year and people want to see numbers, you don't have to make 100 different versions of an Excel with 100 different versions of different graphs and dashboards. You literally just have your one Excel and your one dashboard, and you can send it out with different permissions and filters on it to everyone. You can even have that sharing system automated, and it's just so much easier.
Yeah. And to that point, even like approval workflows on ERN, making adjustments, we have a host of approval workflows. So you know who made those adjustments, what if they were approved by certain department heads and all those different things, everything's tracked, right?
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I see some questions coming in. So let's see. First of all, yes, the recording will be sent out. I already said that earlier, but just want to mention that. Okay. How about let's take Ruth's question first. For forecasting and budgeting, can you have what if multiple views?
Yeah, very good question, Ruth. So going back to my spiel about like the flexibility, you just need to add it as a field. Essentially, you can have multiple scenarios. So scenario planning and what if scenario is one of the most common use cases we see. And it's also nice because all the scenario can be compared against each other on the dashboards and the reports as well.
Thanks.
And another common follow-through question with that is how far in advance we can plan to. 100 years if you want to plan to, we can do that as well.
Yeah, nice. Right? Humans are going to be living much longer in the next centuries. We want to make sure our finances are ready for it. Okay, Anthony, Tony, he's curious if Datarails uses or offers a standardized chart of accounts for mapping purposes, or Does Datarails solely rely on the source system's chart of accounts?
Very good question. Oh, sorry. Go on, Roxy. Totally
Yeah,
jump
there's
in.
a little more. Maybe you see it yourself though, but yeah, he says it's particularly useful with disparate systems or multiple source ERPs. Take it away now.
Yeah, sorry, jumped in there too early. I love this question. That's why. No, Tony, really good question there. So we can use your source system, COA, not a problem. And going back to that mapping lookup file I showed you earlier, right? You can essentially do the same logic to tie out a whole bunch of different COAs. So when you have multiple entities with their own chart of accounts, that's a very common use case. And because the data is tagged to all those different GLs and at that COA level, you can report on the individual COA plus the consolidated COA as well. On the same note as well, it doesn't just have to be the chart of accounts for the GL departments, business unit, all these different other segments as well.
Yeah, no limitations there really, right?
Yeah, and that goes to speak to the flexibility of DR, right? Like if you want to have any kind of structure to look things up, very simple. There's no like limitation on what you can do there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna paste something in the chat. I don't want to take more time. This is as much as we allotted for, but if you would like a personalized demo to see exactly how Datarails can help you with your consolidation needs, to get into the details about Datarails functions and your spreadsheets, just addressing a couple of the questions there, please visit our website and book a demo. It's free, and our team would be more than happy. Our team of FP&A experts will guide you through the system pertaining to your specific needs. Any final remarks? Nirv?
Oh, on my side, no, to your point. So I know obviously I'm biased team and I work for Datarails. So, but if you honestly need a solution, and I think in most cases, finance evolving so fast, right? With so many nuances that come up to like an FP&A solution is a game changer. Like I wish I knew about these, like when I got into finance, would have made my life a lot easier. And like I said, I probably would have still had hair if that was the case. But yeah, would love to have a chat with any of you all. And I know Victor had a specific question as well pertaining to consolidation. Victor, happy to jump on a more one-on-one chat with you. Please feel free to reach out at any time.
Thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate your participation today and wish you all a lovely rest of your day and a happy holiday season.
Have a good one all.